We're grateful because it's brought us all together, as Hester said. That's why we're here. And we don't care really what they think. There is a story to be told in defence of the Australian farmer and of our food security. Can I introduce you to Dr. Wayne Sommerville, who's a clinical psychologist from Kyogle. He gave evidence to the state inquiry in the coal seam gas industry. They didn't like what he had to say. Wayne.
If the coal seam gas industry is allowed to destroy country life in the land, then there will be widespread distress, social disruption and political turmoil. The situation rests on a knife's edge. There is great anxiety and fear in rural communities. A storm is brewing, and I fear that Australia is in for some terrible times. After speaking to the New South Wales Parliamentary Committee, I think that while we might hope for the best, we need to prepare for the worst. I'd like to talk to you about the psychological effects of coal seam gas mining on rural communities. Landowners face the prospect of gas companies forcibly entering their properties, building roads, setting up camps, drilling bores that punch down through aquifers, digging dams for contaminated water, and setting up noisy, brightly lit wells that will run 24 hours a day for the next 30 years. It's hard to imagine how you could manage the coal seam gas industry so that it was more harmful to country people. This is the most extreme, radical experiment in social and environmental engineering that Australia has ever seen. Current New South Wales coal seam gas policy denies landowners the right to control access to their properties. It ignores our right to quiet enjoyment of the land that we own and pay rates on. It favours big corporations over individuals and the environment. Governments can resume land for fair compensation. But that's not what's happening here. Under current policy, the rights of landholders are being violated without proper consideration or compensation. But perhaps most importantly, current policy turns a blind eye to the massive loss in land values that comes with coal seam gas industrialisation. The value that a farming family adds to their property during their lifetimes is often their only superannuation and legacy for their children. The decline in land values by the coal seam gas caused by coal seam gas mining is in reality a compulsory, massive, cruel transfer of superannuation wealth from farming families to mining companies.
Yes, absolutely.
Coal seam gas is not so profitable if you take into account the rip-off of farmers' retirement wealth. The psychological impact of such destruction of property, lifestyle and prospects will result in predictable emotional responses. For many, the loss will lead to anxiety, breakdown and depression. Some will suicide. But some people will respond with anger, revenge and violence. Fear and anxiety are normal, healthy human emotions. Anxiety alerts us to the presence of a threat, and fear and anger give us the drive to respond to danger. Distressing thoughts and images or even dreams about the problem, feeling on edge, being irritable all the time, having trouble sleeping, not enjoying life the way you used to, not being able to remember or concentrate. All of these are normal reactions when you're preparing to fight off a danger. Now, our inbuilt survival mechanisms work well when we need to fight off a wild animal, but they're less effective when the danger is caused by a distant politician that you can't get your hands on. Many people have used their anxiety and their anger very well. They've devoted enormous amounts of energy to fighting coal seam gas mining, to writing submissions, to coming along to meetings like this today. If these efforts result in the danger being removed, then all will be well. And people will be able to let go of the anger because it did its job. But if these efforts fail to remove the threat, then the anxiety and anger will persist. Anger turned inward leads to depression. Anger turned outward leads to violence. One of the Parliamentary Committee members implied to me that anxiety about coal seam gas was irrational. There is no way that anxiety about coal seam gas is irrational. Earth's great systems of soil, water and air support all life on this planet. Take care of the soil, water and air and life will thrive. Damage the soil, water and air and life suffers. Coal seam gas mining pollutes ground and surface water. It contaminates pastures. It fouls the air. It harms people, animals and plants. No, anxiety about coal seam gas is rational and it is justified. I'd like to say a few things about the political management of the coal seam gas industry. Most of us expect that any rational, good-hearted person who learns about the destructive effects of coal seam gas mining would want to change things for the better. So why do certain politicians continue to support coal seam gas? The key is to understand that some politicians are motivated by irrational beliefs and greed. Most people feel empathy and follow the golden rule of treating others as they would like to be treated themselves. But some people believe that they have the right to further their own interests regardless of the impact on others. Proponents of the coal seam gas industry are so obsessed with their own self-interest that all they can see is the gas down below. For them, the soil, water and air and the life that it supports are just obstacles in the way of their getting to the gas. For most of us, life isn't just about making money. Life's also about creating happiness and well-being. And just because some people will make a fortune from extracting gas from the earth, it does not follow that this is a good idea. The question should be asked, is the money the miners and government make going to be worth the price that the community will pay? Much of the political thinking on coal seam gas is superficial and short-sighted. It is certainly not intelligent or wise. Some politicians are unable to think deeply about anything for more than a brief period of time. By contrast, country people routinely think about what it will mean a season, a decade, or even a lifetime down the track if they, say, improve a paddock or plant a woodlot. The ability and determination needed to weigh up risks and benefits and to see a job through to the end is as valuable today as it ever was. But the political supporters of coal seam gas have ignored risk assessment and due diligence as they have revved up this industry. As a member of the Rural Fire Service, I know what bushfires can do. I hope that someone has properly analysed the risks involved in building a network of thousands of gas wells connected by miles of pressurised pipes across bushfire-prone rural Australia. An RFS volunteer that I treated as a clinical psychologist had been lucky to survive when his striker was overrun by the Canberra firestorm. Within a year of returning, my client suffered a severe psychiatric breakdown, but 2 other members of his crew had suicided. Such volunteers pay a price that goes unrecognised. I hope that the RFS has policies that forbid their crews from going anywhere near a fire that threatens a coal seam gas well. Another elephant in the room, we heard about one earlier, but there's another elephant in the room not yet being properly addressed, and that's the threat of violence and destruction of mining equipment and property. Just ignoring the possibility of terrorism and sabotage does not make the danger go away. There has not been a terrorist attack on Australian soil. I hope that there has been a proper assessment of the risk of attacks on a widely distributed network of gas wells. How secure are these facilities? What happens when they blow up? How easy is it to put out a burning coal seam gas well or a gas pipeline that's ruptured in multiple places? I trust that those responsible can guarantee the security of the gas network they're building and can guarantee the safety of rural citizens. I've heard it suggested that coal seam gas companies prefer access rights rather than ownership because This leaves the landholder with the legal liability for fires and other damage. As a landowner, I didn't like the sound of that at all. I'd like to say a few things about the media. I think that the recent coal seam gas advertising campaign is a cynical attempt to swindle the Australian public. The advertisements are illogical, irrational, they manipulate opinion through emotion. One ad claims that farmers support coal seam gas. Sure, you could find a farmer that supported coal seam gas somewhere, but I could find a doctor who could be used in an ad that said doctors support smoking. A local ad has an unnamed teacher saying that she wants coal seam gas because this will give the area a second industry. What industry? Once the flying construction workers leave, we will be left with a diminished tourist industry and an impoverished farming community. And then there's the ad that shows a horse grazing next to a coal seam gas well, with the usual caption of natural coal seam gas. They're cynically associating the positive word natural and an image of a horse with the dangerous and filthy product that they're selling. I wished I could afford to run an advertising campaign ad which ran something like coal seam gas, natural, like cancer and death. Coal seam gas advertisers want to divide city and country people. Letters to the Herald claim that farmers opposed to coal seam gas were guilty of NIMBYism, not in my backyard, and that the farmers were in no position to complain because they used chemicals and their cows damaged the land. Such attitudes are ignorant and divisive and are just what the coal seam gas advertising media want. So what lies ahead? Susan and I, we live on a good creek. But during the last drought, we had to rely on a bore for water. And at the end of our valley, there are two World Heritage rainforests. If you follow the creeks to the tops of the ranges, you'll find where the water comes out of the ground. Aquifer-fed springs have sustained these rainforests for millions of years. And now thousands of coal seam gas wells are planned for our area. If certain aquifers are damaged, then these rainforests will be destroyed, and our farm's ability to survive droughts will be greatly compromised. The strength of the coal seam gas industry is its massive wealth and political power. Its weakness is that it's on the wrong side. It pursues greed at a terrible cost to Australia. Opponents of the coal seam gas do not have great wealth, but they're on the right side of this issue. They accept their responsibility as custodians of the land. They want to pass on the right legacy to the next generation. They know that clean water, good soil, and healthy rural communities are going to be the most precious commodities in the entire world, bar none, in coming decades. So what will stop the relentless coal seam gas industrialisation of the Australian countryside? History gives us some examples of protests that change government policy. But the current situation is unlike anything that has gone before. In the 1960s, I witnessed the marches against the Vietnam War. Since then, I've worked with hundreds of veterans and their families to ease the dreadful consequences of that conflict. I remember the 1970s Terania Creek and the 1980s Franklin River protests. In Kyogle, we will see similar style of protests. A planned pipeline from Kyogle across the border ranges to Queensland will take gas shipped to China, and this pipeline will open up all of the northern rivers to coal seam gas mining. This pipeline will be strongly resisted. But in most places we face a different kind of threat, and it's not possible to campaign effectively against thousands of wells that spring up all over the countryside. We are in the early stages of a great assault. Rural communities have been blitzed by an organised, powerful enemy that has no regard for their well-being. Early victories have given the coal seam gas industry a toehold in just about every community in the land. Unless our politicians come to their senses, I cannot see how we're going to avoid years of conflict and strife. I fear that along the way, too many innocent people are going to be hurt. All communities will need to band together and support each other if they are to avoid the burnout that comes with long campaigns. We must not repeat the terrible mistakes that were made during the Vietnam era. The diggers were profoundly harmed by the shameful acts of a few people who spat and threw paint on them. But the politicians who controlled the war were never troubled. A steelworker friend told me how hard it is for him to find work. He did not want to move his young family to the mines, and the coal seam gas companies offer him big wages. Wherever this takes us, I strongly urge everyone not to direct their anger and protest at mining employees. Protests should be directed at the politicians and executives who are responsible for the coal seam gas outlet. We must take the fight directly and personally to those who make the decisions, to their offices, perhaps even their homes. But we'd better hurry up if we want to protest with the executives involved. I read the other day that Gasco, the company that wants to turn the northern rivers into a gas field, is selling out to a company partly owned by Communist China. It's not going to be easy to protest to executives who live in Beijing. What a great idea. Start up a coal seam gas company, then make a fortune selling out to China, who benefits from a 5-year exemption on royalties. And then charge Australian consumers world parity price for the gas they purchase back for domestic power production. How good is that? On second thoughts, we'd better hurry up and protest the politicians before they retire to China. How times have changed. I remember in the Vietnam era we were being told that China was a threat, that it was going to come down through Vietnam and be a threat to us all. And I remember Bob Hawke crying over the fate of Chinese students crossed under the tanks at Tiananmen Square. And now we're being told that it's racist to suggest there's something wrong with the Chinese buying up our farmland, and even suggested that it's un-Australian to suggest that farmers should have the right to lock the gate. I hope it isn't true that there are ex-politicians who are profiting from such deals. From Tara, Queensland, told me that she had visited a farmer friend to find him curled up on the floor crying. He was being driven mad because he could not escape the noise of a nearby gas compression station. He could not sell his land. He could not afford to move away. We cannot allow such things to happen. None of us can afford the costs involved in trying to convince politicians to act reasonably, but we will pay any price for the sake of our families and communities. None of us wants this fight. But for our country, we will not back down. The stakes are so high, we must win. Thank you.
Wonderful. Dr. Wayne Sommerville, you can imagine why they weren't happy at the Senate, at the Upper House inquiry.